evening, everybody. I hope that the week is treating you well. I am really happy for everyone to be here. It's been a pretty good week for me. Um, with classes that I've been taking, I have finally started to feel comfortable in my own skin and talking about, crystals with Gemma and sharing information with all of you. Yeah, it brings me a lot of joy. So I really hope that you enjoy tonight's conversation. Remember that if you have questions for me, Stephen, Ghost Dragons, is in the background and he will pop them up on screen for me. Just make sure to put them in capital letters for me so that I can read them a lot easier. I'm actually going to put my glasses on because that will help. And welcome. Um, so tonight, one of the things I wanted to do that I really haven't had the chance to do with all of you is share a few of my personal paranormal experiences that kind of got me down this whole rabbit hole of, trying to understand what is out there. What is going on with the supernatural in our world. For as long as I can remember, I've had experiences that were out of the ordinary or supernatural. Um, I think the first one that really sticks in my mind, I was preteen. I couldn't tell you exact age. I'm thinking I was probably around 8 or 9. We used to live in Albuquerque, and I had been having a really rough, stressful time, and we had gone over to a friend's house, and I, I felt like I was alone. I felt like I didn't have any support, and I just kind of closed my eyes and said, you know, please, if there's anybody listening that can just help me feel safe. And when I looked down this hallway in the home that I was in, laying in the hallway was what I could only describe as a full-size black panther. Now, when I looked at this thing, it looked solid to me. It looked 100% real. I even, thinking, okay, maybe it's trick of light and shadow. Is this something that, my mind is manufacturing? And when I looked at it and a person walked down the hallway and it actually got up and moved out of the way and laid back down, I knew that I wasn't seeing things that, well, I was seeing things that were there. And so looking at it, basically mind speak, telepathy, was what I started. And I said, asked it its name. And it told me its name, which I keep secret. That's between me and my guardian. And asked it, just to be there for me and to show itself when I needed it. From that point on, all through into my late years of high school, I would see this particular guardian. Now, I haven't seen it in years. Um, she uh, was always there, though, whenever I needed that reassurance. And in the classes that I've been taking, one of the things that we've been going over is meeting our guides, meeting our guardian angels, understanding who those higher beings are and how to communicate with them. And honestly, it wasn't until I was taking the class that I realized that that's exactly what I had done. I had intuitively called this guardian into being with me um, in a time of need. And I know that all of you have those times when the stresses can be really high and you're anxious, you have anxiety, and we can call upon those higher beings through meditation. And meditation doesn't have to be, sitting cross-legged with, your hands held in upright posture. Meditation can be going for a walk in nature. Meditation can be putting on the headphones and listening to your favorite music that brings you joy, that you get immersed in that moment. And it's in that moment that you're able to think and actually speak to these beings and call them in. The one thing that my teacher Sarah brings up, and I agree with 100%, is when you do this, you ask them to come in love and light only, that they are there for your highest good. Um, Later on, when I got into my teenage years, I started learning how to do readings for people using tarot cards, using pendulums, and things of that nature. And if you hear a noise off to the side of me, my husband's getting into our pantry. But I found that I had a natural, innate ability to pull information pertinent to that person without any prior knowledge. And my conversation tonight's going to bounce back and forth a little bit between this and my class, because in Wednesday's class, we've been learning to delve deeper into what Sarah calls our agreements. And the agreements are those of, if I see, say, for instance, the color purple, what does that color mean to me? Now, that color may mean something completely different to you and to the person over there, but each of us set our own agreements. And we have about 50 people that do the Zoom class on Wednesday evenings, which you'll see, oftentimes I'll be in the chat with Gemma during her card readings and have to go to class. And I felt really honored that Sarah chose, out of the whole group, only two people to read for her. Uh, and as she put it, she only asks people that she really trusts. So it was a very big honor. And we used our oracle cards in very much a similar way to what Gemma does, to give each other readings. And not only was I finally, for the first time in a long time, really comfortable in doing so, but I nailed it. I was able to give her the information that it resonated with her. It was pertinent to her situation. And so I've been able to do this for as long as I can remember. My mother used to have a set of tarot cards when I was 5, 6, 7 years old. I wasn't very old. And she did readings for her friends. Back then, you're talking uh, early 70s. It it was kind of still kept in smaller circles. It wasn't as openly talked about as we are able to do today, or even, when I was a teen, in the 80s. And at one point, I asked if I could use her tarot cards. I'd like to try. And so I did a reading actually for my mom. After that, every time my mother would try to do a reading with that set of tarot cards, that reading, every card would come up upside down. Every card would be basically, the answer is unclear. The answer is unclear. And so she wound up giving me that set of tarot cards. That was my very first set. There's a lot of history behind tarot and the belief that tarot cards, your first set should be gifted. And I think I'm in agreement with Sarah on this one as well, in that your tarot cards, the thought behind them being given to you came from a period of time where it was very secret. Um, you would actually go through a lot of persecution uh, if it was found that you were a reader, if that you were doing tarot readings. And so oftentimes, a mother would give them to her daughter, or a friend would give them to a friend. And so I'm in firm belief that that's where that came from. Now, again, folks, remember, if you have any questions for me during this hour, please put them in all caps, and Stephen Ghost Dragons will put them up for me to be able to see. And I really hope that you all are enjoying the conversation. When I was in my early 20s, now, we're talking late 80s, early 90s, about the time actually I met my second husband, who I'm married to now. Um, I had a couple of friends that were having issues in their home, and they knew that I was very, very sensitive to the paranormal. So they asked me to come over to their house and see if I could understand what was going on. The young woman was having issues with nightmares, and very, very violent nightmares. And it had only started since she had moved into this particular room in the house. Um, she said, she would get headaches all the time, and that because her room was up the stairs, had even felt like she'd been pushed at some point. And so when I went over to her house, um, I try to do readings as cold as possible so that I'm not getting information necessarily out of suggestion. But they had a photograph hanging in their foyer, or foyer, depending on where you're from, of a woman that looked like it was from the early 1800s. And I glanced at it and I just felt uneasy when I looked at it. And overall, the house downstairs felt fairly comfortable, felt light, and open. And the further I got upstairs, the more the feeling of being closed in, um, like you've been locked in a small space, is what came over me. And when I got upstairs and went into her room, literally at the threshold of the doorway, it was like having a wool blanket that was soaked in water thrown over my entire body. It felt heavy, it felt suffocating, it felt smothering, and I began to get a headache. And so I stepped back out of the room and walked away for a little bit, and it went away. And to test it again, I went through the threshold, and again, that feeling of oppression, all I could get is that there was anger in the room at that time. So we went back downstairs and I had a conversation with the young woman and asked her information about, how long had she been in the room. I did take mental note of what objects were in the room. Asked her if there was anything new in the room, perhaps a new object from a family member or something she picked up had been brought in that brought something in with it. And what we we're able to come to the conclusion of is that that was her great grandmother's bedroom. That was where she passed away. It had not been used since she passed away in that room. And when they finally did everything, they just took all of her stuff out. It either went in storage or was sold off. And so the slate was wiped clean, but the room itself was not cleansed, um, nor was peace made with her great grandmother. And so, at that point in time, I was early in my spiritual journey. I referred her to a lady I knew that did house cleansings. And, once she did that, everything seemed to calm down. Her headaches went away, the nightmares went away. A few years after that, and this was when I was still with my first husband, we moved into a complex that had two houses basically that were connected together into a duplex. They were full size houses that had been connected together. And I started noticing that our dog would act like she was chasing something through the house. She would run through the house and she'd be yip, yip, yip as she went. And then she'd stop and she'd suddenly stare up the ceiling, almost like her eyes were following something as it went up through the ceiling. And as things progressed over the next couple of months of living in this house, I began having the same type of experiences where I was getting nightmares every night. I was waking up two or three times during the night, sometimes more. And then things were getting moved around in the house. Um, Things that, you know, empty coffee table. I'd set my keys down on the coffee table and I'd get ready to leave and they'd be gone. And I'd be tearing the whole house apart. And I'd find them in the oddest places. Like I'd find them in the freezer, or, I'd find them in the bottom of the closet when I know good and well I'd put them down right in the middle of the coffee table. So, again, tapping into my own abilities, I, did some meditations, did some, how's the good way to put it, personal searching of what was going on in the home before I contacted anybody else. And what impressions I was getting was, one, I had a little boy who, I want to say around the age of 10, that had died of tuberculosis. And he was attracted to me because I looked like mother. Um, Anytime that I would see mental images of him psychically, that's the word that I heard, is mother. And so my assumption was that when he passed, he didn't have enough understanding of what happened to find his way to where he needed to find his way into the light. And now, mind you, not all souls will immediately go to their loved ones, go to the light. They may linger in a limbo for a multitude of reasons. They may feel lost. They may fear what might happen on the other side because of social conditioning that they received while they were living. So, with this young boy, I was able to come to the discernment that he was the one that was playing tricks around the house, moving things around, hiding things. Um, my agreement with him was basically, okay, you can play tricks, on our guests that are not harmful, but not on me. This is our home. This is the way it's supposed to be. And after that, it worked out pretty good. Occasionally, yeah, Fred would come over, maybe they'd set something down and it would get moved. But it wouldn't be to the point where we're tearing the whole house apart trying to find it. Um, I wound up contacting a lady who was also a spiritual medium, and she brought in two others to do a house cleansing for me because I was still having the nightmares and not able to sleep and so on and so forth. And I wrote down all the information that I had received in my own discernments, in my own meditations, just for my own personal reassurance of, okay, if they pick up on what I had picked up on, then I'm getting correct information. And when we sat down, they actually did a ceremony that I thought was really nice, where we each took a notepad and wrote down what information we received, whether it was, this is what, I see a person, they look like this, or I see a name or a color, and then the priestess, if you will, did a ceremony to call them in and show them how to cross over to find their loved ones to go into the light. Now, she did not force any single being to go into that light, but she invited them to. The thing that broke my heart is our dog, we'd had her in the kitchen and the door closed so that she would be out of the way. And when I called forth the young boy and said, at that point, I could see an older man coming forward to help guide him. And I told him that it was okay. You can go. She let out the most mournful howl. I'll never forget. And after that, we closed the circle. The ceremony was nice and calm, and the whole house was just silent. And I never slept better. I can't even say I've slept that good in a long time, honestly. And then, let's see, when I married my second husband and moved to Los Alamos, we became members of the local um, fraternal order of Elks, the Los Alamos Elks Lodge. Now, it sits on a piece of property that originally was the first jail in town during the Manhattan era. Um, once the first couple of years of Los Alamos and the Manhattan Project, of course, the town was a closed government facility. When you came up Front Hill, you had a gate, you had to show an ID before they would let you through. And then after the Manhattan Project was finished and they turned it into a national laboratory and it became a town, they set up a community center. Fuller Lodge, which was the original boys' school, became a public center and an arts center. They built a jail and so on. Well, later on, that jail was torn down and the Elks Lodge was built there. And from the very first time I entered the Elks Lodge, I could feel the different energies of all the people that had been through this facility. There was one closet in particular that I did a lot of volunteer work, and so I would go in and help clean and help set up for parties, things like that. And when I opened the door to this closet the first time, I got slammed in the face with the mental image of a man in jeans and a tank shirt and being stabbed to the point that I actually felt pain in my side from where he had this wound. And I stepped back, I closed the door, I said, okay, off limits for now. And I went later on, and this is actually when I found out that it had been a jail. And I said, what is the likelihood that, say, there was someone who either stabbed someone while in the jail or was stabbed while in the jail? And it just, I was not too certain of my gifts even then. I wasn't confident. But I did talk to a couple of people about it and said, I just, I get a bad vibe off of this room. So, I kind of stayed away from it. Later on, when I was there with just a couple of the other officers, I actually went in and said a prayer and did a little sage in that room, and I was more comfortable going into it. But at one point, uh, my husband and I served as officers back to back. He was lodge secretary, and then when he stepped down to be one of the other officers, I stepped up as secretary. And I had been in the secretary's office doing some paperwork and noticed that things kept getting shuffled. I'd set something down and I'd look over, it wasn't where I put it. And so I asked a couple of the past secretaries if they'd had any of these experiences, and they said yes. And then I talked to a friend who was the treasurer at the time and asked him, you know, what's going on with this room? Was there someone who passed away in there? Um, what could you tell me? And he explained to me that one of the first women members of that lodge um, was secretary for the lodge as well and had passed away. Um, I want to say he said 8 or 9 years previous, but apparently had occasionally been seen in the building. Sometime a little bit later, I was sitting at the bar, which was just outside of the secretary's office, and there were only guys in the bar. And I'd gone up to get a soda and sit there and just chill out for a little bit. And I, clear as a bell, heard a woman's voice right next to me say, hello. And out of instinct, I just said, oh, hi. And I turned my head, but there was no one there. And I looked around, and the bartender kind of tilted his head and looked at me. And I asked him, I said, is there another woman in here? Or is it just me? He said, no, you're the only gal in here. Okay. And I just took it as she was just letting herself be known to me and knew that I could hear her. Um, that particular bar, there were a lot of incidents of glasses flying off of the glass racks, the wine racks, to the point that they even, they had the hanging wine racks. And if you've ever worked in a restaurant or bar scenario, you know that water, moisture can actually cause an object to hydroplane and it'll actually move across the surface, be it a rack, be it the counter, and so you kind of have to take that in mind. But they actually rehung the uh, wine rack for the glasses so that it tilted backwards. So it was at an uphill slant, and yet the glasses would still fly off of this rack and land behind the bartender, like they were trying to get this person's attention. I did see personally a glass, one of the, I guess they call them a highball glass, fly off of the counter, and not just hydroplane, but full force as if someone had slapped it, fly off of the counter and then shatter on the floor. One of the bartenders that was a friend of ours that we still see on a regular basis, um, he would usually close out the bar, and he said, I can't count how many glasses that have broken. Not getting a sip of my beverage. Um, and at one point, we're sitting around the bar, and he had put his jacket on the end of the bar because he's getting ready to close out and lock the building up and go home. And his jacket went flying off the bar as if someone was saying, that doesn't belong there. And whack, knocked it off the bar. Um, quite funny to watch the expression on his face when that happened. Then at another evening, we're sitting around after hours, um, myself, and I want to say the other person was my husband, who was also an officer at the time. It may have been the treasurer at that time, and then the bartender. And we're sitting on the side of the bar, this by the edge of the lodge room. Now, this lodge room door is the one that for their ceremonies would be used for people to enter and exit. As part of their ceremony, the esquire stands on the outside of the door and would knock a single time on the door. He'd wait for a response. He would knock again, and then the doorknob would turn. We're sitting at the bar, and we hear smack, and we turn and we look because the sound came from the door. And we kind of look at each other and we're like, okay, sure. I guess they're just practicing. And then a few moments later, we heard again, and we look in time to see the doorknob turn, the door open, and then pull closed. And we're like, yep, they're just practicing for ceremony. And so this kind of thing I have experienced my entire life. Um, to the point of in my own home. When we first moved into this house, we had what I call house fairies, um, orbs of light, little as bright as if you know what the old-fashioned Polaroid flash bulbs would be, little bright blue balls of light. And they would always travel along my hallway, down and around into the living room, and then up through the ceiling. And at that point in time, we had um, three kitties that we had adopted from the local shelter that would chase them. In particular, Nutter, my little black kitty, would chase them. And so I knew that, okay, I'm not just seeing this. Now, unfortunately, my husband never physically saw them, but he knew the cats could see them because he watched as Nutter would run down the hall. He'd run around the corner and both arms, paws up in the air, up against the wall, and meowing as loud as he could at the ceiling. Just like, come back, I want to play. And that went on for, I don't know, I couldn't tell you how many years. Um, and I would, like I said, best describe them as house fairies. I never got the emotion, the feeling, the sensation that there was anything to do with harm, that these were balls of energy that were beings, was what I picked up from it, what I discerned. And everyone I've talked to that deals with this type of information say the same kind of thing. That, the little blue ones, the little orbs that you see going through the house, those are spirits. And so when I would see them, I had no fear. I had love. I would wave and I'd say, "Hello, how are you this evening? Lovely to see you." And after a while, it got less and less. And then, honestly, I think it stopped probably around the time Netter passed away, which was 2007, 2006, 2007. And so, I've had things like that happen here. Um, I've had, the sensation of being visited by my grandmother. And she had this way about her of just absolute joy, that everything that you would think of that embodies a grandmother, um, that gentle, love, warm to hug kind of sensation. And I will have that sensation come over me when I feel like I'm stressed, needing reassurance, even like when I was dealing with Ladybug. And I will physically feel a hand on top of my head and stroke down this way over my scalp and down my hair. And when I was young and I would get sick, that's exactly what she would do. She would sit with me. She, use a cool washcloth to cool my face, to calm down my fevers, and she would stroke my hair. And so that's her way of letting me know that she is near me and she's there for me. And I really think it's important for all of us to acknowledge these little signs and synchronicities of spirit telling us that they're there, they're watching out for us, and be thankful for it and not fearful of it. Even my husband, who is, you know, in some ways, I'd say he doesn't have a spiritual bone in his body. Even he will acknowledge when, like, riding on his motorcycle and something catches his eye, like a bird flying, that causes him to slow his motorcycle just in time to keep him from being in an accident. And he'll acknowledge that guardian angels were watching over me. Spirit was watching over me. They try to communicate with us in the best ways they know how. And let's see, what do we got? Miss Shelley. Hello, sweetheart. Okay, let me see if I can read this. All right, going to ask you about when you get touched hair. Okay, so, part of that comes down to your personal agreement with spirit. You can set those boundaries. Absolutely 100%. In my personal practice, what I will do on a regular basis is I ground down. And when I say that, I mean I focus my personal energy as deep down into the earth as I can imagine like roots of a tree sinking deep down into the earth. And then I imagine drawing energy from all around the earth, the air, the sky to create a golden ball of light that encompasses me. And I say, in love and light only, this is what you are and are not allowed to do. So if something scares me, I tell them flat out, ain't gonna happen. And a good example of this, when we first moved into the house, uh, before I really had talked about it with my husband, um, I was taking a shower. So I'm by myself. The only other entities living in the house are the cats. And I literally solid as if a person was standing right behind me, felt tap, tap, tap on the back of my shoulder. I'm in the flipping shower. And oh, I let loose. Now, because of my abilities, I can broadcast. I can actually push energy out that fast. So when I get angry, look out. And I did. I said, wait a minute. You are not allowed to touch me in my shower. This is my space. You get out now. If you want to communicate with me, you find another way to do it and not in a private, intimate place. And it didn't happen again. Now, later, through discernment, I found out it was my first husband. He had passed away, and I didn't know it. He had passed away of alcohol abuse and drug abuse. So, yeah, you know, I don't know if he was coming to say hi or if he was coming to, I don't want to go there. But I laid down the ground rules. I said, no, you are not allowed to do that. So yes, you can set up those boundaries. You can say, um, if you are my grandmother, you are allowed to do X. You are allowed to move your jewelry that you gave me to a place where I will find it so that I know it's you, or caress the top of my head in a loving manner, uh, things of that nature. Um, when Nutter passed away, you know, I told him that if he wanted to come visit me, let me hear him and hear him with my physical ear. And his favorite thing to do was to go in our big bathroom, our master bathroom, and in my opinion, he was singing to himself. He would go mow and mow and mow. And the first few months after he passed away, on occasion, I would hear that with my physical ears, and even my husband heard it. So, yeah, it's a two-way street. You have to set up boundaries. You have to set up ground rules of what's allowed, what's not allowed. And Miss Shelley, the same thing goes for your visions and your dreams. You can set those boundaries. You can make a contractual agreement with spirit, and spirit being your guides, your guardians, your angels, spirits from beyond, entities, any of those that want to try to communicate with you in how they communicate. You can ask them to communicate with, you know, synchronicities and omens. You can say, send me a message in the clouds that looks like a heart for me to know that it's my guides and my guardians. Send me a raven's feather to let me know that my teachers and spirit beings are watching over me. So, yeah, absolutely. All right, so what have we got? So, Shelley, Lara, is it possible to see inside another one's dreams that they have had. So in a way, yes, and not very many people talk about it. It can be done. It's mostly done. Some people would call it remote viewing, or a reading. So, say for instance, if I were to do it for you, it would not be as if I were physically in your dream. It would be as I am viewing your dream like a film. I could see what you saw, I could feel what you felt, but it would be replaying as though I were watching a movie. Okay. Now, someone with massive abilities would be able to show themselves to you, to reach out to you. The only instances that I personally have ever heard of that happening is with twins, either maternal or identical twins, and being able to reach out to their twin through the dream state when something's going on. So, yeah, I hope that gives you at least some clarification. Uh, One of the things that was brought up to me that I thought I'd do just a little bit of touch on is that you guys like hearing about crystals and healing with crystals and so on. Um, you can get crystals in so many sizes and forms that you can work with. For instance, you know, I actually bought this ring. I'm hoping to lose a little weight so that I can wear it a little more comfortably. It's silver with gold on the edges, and it's got a small ruby on top of it, along with the Merkaba uh, repetitive pattern around the outside. And so I've decided to wear it to have the energy within my field of the stone within my personal toroidal field, my energetic field. You'll notice that I wear bracelets with various stones. Like this one, I've got obsidian for protection. I've got clear quartz for magnification. Um, then the next one is uh, agate for grounding, ocean jasper um, to speak clearly using my throat chakra, and then again, ocean jasper um, to help me communicate to all of you in a way that resonates and that is easy to understand and it makes sense. Um, on my other wrist, I have things such as rose quartz. And to me, rose quartz embodies love, but it also embodies self love. So let's see, what are you saying there, Shelley? So are hagstones safe for us to wear and use when found in your yard? Absolutely. So I don't know if I've got one close by, but so a hagstone and a wishing stone are basically the same. The Let me see if I've got some in my dish. This is the other side of the camera. Um, you'll see it's usually a granite stone that will have a band of quartz running around it. And do I have it? I do not. But it'll have a band of quartz that runs around the body of it. And in Ireland, those are considered good luck. They're considered wishing stones. And then you'll also see hagstones that have a natural hole through one edge. Again, they're considered good luck. They're considered wishing stones because it's believed that the Fae can receive and send good energy through that portal, that hole in the stone. So yes, absolutely. Hagstones are good luck, or at least in my book, and that's the way the Irish believe. Uh, what I wanted to show you, and some of you that follow me on Facebook, I don't know, you might have seen me with this. Uh, in my classes, each week are we have been learning about different uh, crystals every week, and then working with them. So let's see, these are strange. They look like, oh, very cool. So I'll get to that in just a second. Let me show you this. I picked up at our local, it's called a Big Lots. Some I don't know how many of you out there are familiar with it. This is a solid piece of wood. Um, Acacia, I believe is the wood. It's hardwood for $3. It's an olive tray. And I've used it to place all of my tumbles as I'm working with them in class in this, so that one, as I do my meditations, it's very easy for me to pick up and take from space to space. Um, but I can keep them in the order of what I want to work with. And just, a simple little idea of having little tumbles that you can keep with you. You can also carry your tumbles with you in a little pouch or bag to keep them within your energy field. Uh, the idea that as we work with these stones and crystals, we're working with their energy, and you can look up online, excuse me, the meanings behind every stone that's out there. Okay. If you go to the site that I use most often, Sage Goddess, you can look up the meanings on the description of every stone. And there's tons and tons of websites out there that have that. You can also buy books. Uh, like this is one of my go-to favorites, Crystal Bible. I need to get the second edition. Crystal Bible 2 has a lot more information in it. But getting back to the stone itself, and I'll get to your question in just a second about the shapes, that if you think about it from a scientific point of view, you look at the atomic structure of a crystal, of a piece of paper. At its very core, any time that we interact with an object, we are literally exchanging atoms with that object. Now, on the quantum level, the energetic tie that we create when we interact, even through a screen like what we're doing right now, can be just as strong. The air we breathe literally was breathed out by someone on the opposite side of the planet. I believe they say about 30 hours ago. That's how fast it exchanges. So we're constantly exchanging a, a energy on an atomic level with these things that we're interacting with every single day. So to your mention about having specific animal shapes, Shelley, what I would say to you is take those stones and sit with them one at a time. And I want you to write down the first things that come into your head. Single word, don't care what it is, don't care how little sense it makes. It can be you look at it and the first thing that pops into your head, potato. Okay, write it down. You can look at it and say, you know what? I see a frog. Write down frog. Okay. And then what I want you to do, and this goes back to what I was talking about with agreements, is look at those words and, okay, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you think of potato? Oh, I remember my sister always saying how much she hated potatoes. She could stand potatoes, so it comes as something slightly negative. Not super negative, slightly negative. But then frog, well, my favorite memory of being with my sister is us catching frogs out behind our house. So what do you have in common there? Both of those instantaneous connections were with your sister. And so that's where the message comes in. That's where the discernment comes in. And that's where we have to each of our own agreement discern what these messages are. Because I could look at the same stone and while I might pick up on the same messages, mostly because that's what my ability is around, I might not. I might come up with something that does has meaning to me, but not to you. So in because I know you are trying to learn how to understand and decipher all these things that you're getting on a constant basis of, what are we dealing with? What am I, why? Why am I getting this information? Why am I seeing this object? Why am I seeing this situation? So I hope that helps a little bit. Let me know in the comments if it does. And if you have any other questions, I need to check what time we're at because I know that Ghost has to. Uh, okay, hold on. I know that Ghost has to sign off, and so we're going to try to keep it right at the 1 hour mark. Stephen, go ahead and pop that last comment back up for me. So that's great. It looks like the shape of a frog, but what what on it is not a frog, it's a wolf. With one eye stranger than the other. Okay, so then great that I immediately, I went straight to frog. So with the wolf, what does the wolf mean to you? First thing you think about when you think about a wolf, what does that mean to you? Does it evoke emotion of strength? Does it bring to mind a particular place? Does it bring to mind a particular person? What does that mean to you? Write it down. And if it's not already, I know that Stephen will make sure my email address and my Facebook information is in the comments in the show notes. Get a hold of me. I'm more than happy to talk with you on a one-on-one basis. We can even do a private Zoom or FaceTime through Messenger or something like that. And I'm absolutely happy to help you figure this out because I've been there. I have so been there. And I'm finally feeling confident enough that I can turn this around and actually help the next person. And that next person might just be you. So, with that said, I'm going to end our time tonight. I'm going to ask you all that you please, leave a comment afterwards. One, it helps the algorithm, helps get this out to other people. Let me know if there are any particular things you would like me to talk about, questions you might have for me. Feel free to contact me, whether it be Facebook, Instagram, or email. And, I look forward to next time. I'm hoping that next time, Stephen and Gemma, can join me, and I want to hear all about what's been going on in their lives lately. And I thank you, and I send blessings out to all of you. And in love and light only, may the rest of your week be beautiful and blessed. Thank you so much for being here tonight. And with that, bye bye, everyone.